welcome back to the Middle of Culture. I am one of your co-hosts, Peter.
And I'm your other co-host, Eden, who, of course, started a yawn the second that Peter started the intro. I was like, oh no, the yawn, it's coming. Just get through it before you have to talk. And I didn't.
I mean, we are recording a little later than usual, and it is later where you are than where I am, so I understand that.
It is not that late.
Hey, look, okay, so I'm trying to think back what day it was. Today is Thursday. It must have been Tuesday. I woke up Tuesday morning at 2:50 and never fell back to sleep.
Oh, to be fair, that did happen to me this morning, too. I woke up at 3:05. I didn't remember that until right now.
It's disgusting.
Yeah,
so,
it kind of sucks.
Like, Tuesday night, I was beat, and I went to bed at like my usual time, which I try and get to bed at like 9:30 because, you know, I get up between 4 and 5. I woke up at 1:50, and I had a brief panic attack that I wasn't going to fall back asleep, and then I fell back asleep. So I was very grateful for that.
Well, that's very good. I'm glad you were able to fall back asleep.
You know, but like I say, I'm very protective of my bedtime, so I get it, you know. I look at it and I'm like, you know. But anyway, all that aside, how the heck have you been?
I've been doing pretty good, you know, just hanging out, relaxing since it's spring break here, and just kind of chilling, kind of recharge the batteries. How about you?
Good. Yeah, you know, kind of doing the same other than not spring break. Well, I technically don't get spring break. Last week was my wife's spring break, so she was home, and then I took a couple days off. We went down to Salt Lake because she had some stuff to do there. So we kind of hung out in Salt Lake last, you know, like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And then next week is Gareth's spring break. And so we're leaving tomorrow to go down to Vegas to hang out for a little bit and be warm. We're going to a magic show Saturday night. I don't know anything about the dude other than apparently he won America's Got Talent at some point. And it was rated very highly. It was actually rated more highly than almost any other show. So I said, great, let's check it out.
Okay.
You can't do things like that in Pocatello, so, you know. But yeah, other than that, just, you know, kind of working and doing the things. So if you had some time off, did you, anything extra you've been checking out, reading, playing, watching, anything you want to talk about?
I mean, we'll talk about things I've been watching because I watched a whole bunch of stuff in preparation for today's episode.
Oh, I am interested to hear. I'm looking forward to that. But besides that.
But I have been doing a lot of reading the last few days. Some of the stuff worth mentioning, I'm looking at my list of things I've read so far. Here's a funny thing I need to mention because it's not very good, but I do think it's funny, and I think that you would be maybe more entertained by it than I would. Have you ever heard of the manga Cells at Work?
No.
The premise of the book is, what if the cells were people? And so it's got the main characters are Red Blood Cell, who's a little courier, and White Blood Cell, who is a murderer, like killing all of the killing all of the monsters that get into the body, which is this town that they all live in. And like, it's a really goofy idea, and like, I thought it was going to be a funnier book than it is, but the tone is a little more didactic than I expected it to be. Like, it's genuinely trying to teach you how your systems of your body work, where it's like, here's a T cell. Here's what a T cell does. Look at this army of T cells. Here's what these other types of cells do. Here's what these other types of cells do. It's very goofy conceptually, but it's not a very goofy thing to read, which I thought was a weird disconnect. I wanted it to be funny, and it just wasn't.
Sure.
So I read the first volume of that because we saw it at Five Below, and Cassie bought it to put in the bookmobile, and I was like, I gotta just like look at this, and it was just okay. I'm glad I've read it because now I can say I read the first volume of this comic called Cells at Work, which is what you think it would be. But yeah, it wasn't very good. Some other things
that's good to know.
Some other things worth mentioning. I also read the first volume of a manga called Bloodblade, which, tell me if this premise sounds interesting to you, Peter.
Okay.
What if Dracula But because Dracula was grievously injured and had to like regenerate a body, he's now a little girl who fights with katanas. Don't worry about that. I don't know where the katanas came from, but she now fights with katanas. And also her old maidservant has become some sort of demi-human that can change into animals, but every time she does, she gets a little younger. So she used to be an old lady, and now she's changed into a creature like 3 times during the course of the book, and now she's like maybe 13 looking. And also a Frankenstein's monster is there. And she is there to find Dracula, to take Dracula to Monster Island, where they can be safe from the weird secret society that is trying to hunt down all the monsters.
Okay.
Now you hear that, and you think, that sounds like dog shit. And you're right, it does. But here's the thing. It looks absolutely incredible. It's a very cool looking comic. The art is really, really dynamic. And so even though the premise is pretty stupid, I had a very good time reading it.
All right. Nice.
But yes, the premise of Dracula has become a 13, 14-year-old looking girl with katanas now, but is still just Dracula. Still calls herself Vlad. Whatever. It's weird. Whatever. And then the other thing I will mention, 2 other things I'll mention. Like I said, I've been reading a lot. I read Rosemary Valero O'Connell's collection of comics and poetry called Golden Record. Rosemary Valero O'Connell, if you've never heard of her, is the artist who co-created with Mariko Tamaki, Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, which remains one of the best YA comics I've ever read. I think it's incredible. I think it's supposed to be turned into a movie eventually. It's probably not going to be good because that's what happens. But the book is just incredible. And some of it is the writing, because Mariko Tamaki is a very good comics writer. I like her quite a bit. Usually anything she puts out, I'm like, I'll read it. And it's usually really good. But Rosemary Valero O'Connell's art in that book was just like a revelation to me. And that's when I was like, okay, so I'm just going to buy anything she puts out, right? I'm just going to buy anything. And so her latest book, like I say, was this. It's like oversized. It's like maybe 9 inches by 12 inches. So really big book. It's only like 48, 50 pages. And it is a collection of bilingual Spanglish poetry and comic art. And it's just incredible. Like the sense of like yearning and the way that the language is embodied in this through the course of the poems that are in this collection is just incredible. I was super impressed with it, and again, it looks stellar because Rosemary Valero O'Connell is one of the great comic artists working right now. But like, it was really something. The funniest thing about this comic is I ordered it. I work at the comic store, so I had them order it in for me. And it showed up one Saturday when I was working, and I had grabbed it, and it was the day that we had finally set up our staff picks shelves, which is a thing that we'd been talking about doing. But once the new owner, my coworker who bought the store, once he took over, we did a lot of rearranging, and we set up so we could have like staff pick shelves. And so we had just set up our staff pick shelves. This book had come in ostensibly for me, and I was like, why don't I just put this on my staff pick shelf? And if nobody buys it in a week or 2, I'll just take it home. But let's see if anyone wants to buy it. And someone bought it within 20 minutes because it's just incredible looking. And it has spot gloss on shine on the covers. There's parts that are in silver, and someone picked it up and was like, what is this? And I was like, it is erotic poetry in Spanglish mixed with comic art. And they were like, oh, this is the perfect book for me. And I was like, please take it home with you. So then, the boss bought 2 copies, one for me to take home and one to put back on my staff pick shelf. And sure enough, nice. I sold it again this last Wednesday because I know what the people want. I am emptying my staff pick shelf on the reg in ways that my other coworkers simply do not. I know what the people want.
Sounds like you do. It does.
And then the last thing I will mention, like I say, I've been reading a lot. Have you ever heard of the 1980s anime classic Dirty Pair?
No, I have not.
Now you hear that. You hear that name and you think to yourself, what the hell is Eden going to talk about right now? What the hell is a show called Dirty Pair going to be about? And yeah, it's a little horny, but don't worry about it. It is a comic about these two. It's like set in like a weird sci-fi kind of cyberpunky dystopian-ish future. Whereas there's this thing called the World's Welfare Work Association that sends out trouble consultants whenever there are problems. They're basically like kind of like space mercenaries. And it is a show about these two space mercenaries, Kay and Yuri, who call themselves the Lovely Angels, but every mission they go on is just a disaster. And so everyone calls them the Dirty Pair. Because when they show up, it's just the worst thing that could possibly happen to your planet or your space station or whatever. Even though every time when all is said and done, the like central computer that is in charge of the WWWA always absolves them of guilt. Always says, a lot of people died. It wasn't their fault. They were just there. It was it was stuff. It wasn't them. And so that is the premise of the show. Is it's these two women who get into a lot of very funny scrapes. It's a very funny show. And people inevitably end up dying around them. And you go, haha, it's so funny. A million people died on that planet. Ha ha ha, it's so funny. It's that kind of show. It's kind of dark humor, but it's very, very funny.
Sure.
But so that came out in, I think, 85, 86 or so. And has had some like OVAs and had like a second series in the 2000s. It was a different like reboot or whatever. But shortly after it came out, Eclipse Comics, which is an American comics company, got a license to do English language comics about the Dirty Pair. And so they hired who at the time was a very young up-and-coming comics artist named Adam Warren, who, comic readers might know from the long-running Dark Horse graphic novel series Empowered. This was what he was doing before he did Empowered, essentially. And he spent like 15 years doing 6 different Dirty Pair miniseries, essentially. And Dirty Pair came up when I was at the comic store like 3 or 4 weeks ago. Oh, because they also did a manga that the omnibus was available, and my coworker was like, have you ever heard of Dirty Pair? What the hell is Dirty Pair? And I was like, only maybe my favorite TV show ever. It's so good. So he ordered me in the omnibus of the manga, but then I was like, I've never read all those old comics that Eclipse and Dark Horse put out in the 90s. I should hunt those down because they're all out of print. They're 100% out of print. But I was able to hunt them all down on eBay pretty easily, and it didn't end up costing me very much, all told, for the amount of comics I got. And so I've been picking through those the last few days, and I finished them all up yesterday. I finished up the last of the 6 miniseries, and they were just delightful. Like, Adam Warren just like hits exactly on what makes Dirty Pair work, which is like, it's pretty funny, it's pretty horny, and it's hyper violent, and like horny, but not like in a gross way. Horny in just kind of like a fun, playful way. You know what I mean? Like, these are different things. And they were just very, very fun. I had a very, very good time with them. So this afternoon, I started this manga version. I do not like this one nearly as much. Instead of like fun, horny, it's like pervy. Like, the vibe is not good. It's not as funny, and it's like really lascivious in the ways that it like portrays the girls' bodies, and like, also, I just gotta say it, their boobs look ridiculous because they're like two balloons strapped to their chests. It's like, that's not how boobs work. But anyway, I'm not loving the manga, but I did really love the comics, and I do love the show. So it's kind of disappointing that the last thing to come out of anything Dirty Pair was this kind of mid to bad comic. or manga that I'm reading. But that's what I've been doing. What have you been up to?
I haven't been up to that much, just between work and then again, kind of the busyness of the last weekend and stuff. I've still been reading The Sunlit Man by Brandon Sanderson. It's the final one of the 4 secret projects, and have been enjoying it. Just haven't had quite as much time to really sit down and read. So I started Dragon's Dogma: Dark Arisen. Did you ever?
Do you know
play
what's
that
a good
game?
video game? Dragon's fucking Dogma.
That's good to hear, because I haven't bounced off it yet, but it definitely hits me as here's what a Japanese studio thinks a Western RPG should play like.
Oh, 100%. It is so, like, the thing about Dragon's Dogma, the thing that I love about Dragon's Dogma is exactly what you just said. This is the Monster Hunter team. This is the team that made Monster Hunter saying, Skyrim was big, huh?
Uh-huh.
What if we made a Skyrim? And do they make a Skyrim? No, this is not Skyrim. It is not Skyrim. But also, do they make a weird game where you climb on monsters and like look like a weird little like goblin murder hobo climbing up these monsters, and while your pawns are like firing on it, and like, oh, I think that game is incredible. The way that like it gets so dark at nighttime, and like it is genuinely, in a way that I have never felt in a game before, it is genuinely scary to move through the night. Like most games, it's like, oh, it's nighttime, okay, whatever. No. Dragon's Dogma, I'm going to make a camp. I'm not going out on the road at night. I don't want to die.
Well, like I say, I'm not very far into it. The sequel is coming out shortly, Dragon's Dogma: Dark Arisen 2. And
well, not Dark Arisen 2.
intrigued.
It's just Dragon's Dogma 2.
Oh, sorry. I haven't been paying that much attention, honestly.
Dark Arisen was the expansion that like got incorporated into the base game. So that's why it's always like, when you buy it, it's always called Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen, because it's the full game with the expansion.
Well, there we go. Good to know. I learned something. But yeah, with the second one on the way, I've had the first one forever.
Oh, yeah.
I just never played it. And so I was like, well, I should play this. So I played a little of that. But the one game I've actually been playing quite a bit of is Deep Rock Galactic Survivor. So I don't know if you're familiar with Deep Rock Galactic.
I've played some Deep Rock Galactic, yeah.
Well, it's that, but it's like a reverse bullet hell. It's a bullet heaven game.
It's a survivor's game.
It's a survivor's game. So you pick, you start out and you just have one character class to choose from. You start out with that, you drop down, you've got this map with rock kind of walls. And since you're a miner, you can mine through those walls. So they're not obstacles. They'll slow you down, but you can still go right through them. And there's, again, just swarms and swarms and swarms of aliens and bugs coming at you. And, you're just firing, again, automatically firing against them while you're maneuvering, while you're mining, because there are resources that as you mine those, they're going to allow you in between levels to upgrade things. And then there are materials that outside are going to be global. They're going to be the currency for the global upgrades.
Oh, sure.
Overall. So you're running around trying to survive, kill certain things, collect certain things to complete that level. And then you run back to the drop ship, and then it drops down a level deeper into the mine, that being the idea. And, you go through, you'll unlock other kind of tile sets that are a little different. I only have 2 unlocked so far. And then you unlock other characters. It's pretty new. So I think I anticipate there will be a lot added to it over time, but I've been having a ton of fun with it. It looks great. It is like just kind of like Vampire Survivors, which really, in my mind, at least sort of kicked all of these off.
Oh, absolutely.
Deep Rock Galactic Survivors is a perfect Steam Deck game.
Okay.
It looks a little bit better. It's kind of the top-down isometric 3D, but it looks nice. It runs beautifully on the Steam Deck. It is such a good Steam Deck game to just like grab, sit down, and again, just start diving. And each level will take you, if it takes you too long to kill the bugs and to like kill the elites and all this stuff, they get stronger. So you're incentivized to trying to kill them as fast as possible.
Sure.
But in like 30 minutes, I can get all the way down to the 4th level of the mine and complete it. And it's been a lot of fun. I've been really enjoying it. We know, I'm kind of a sucker for these bullet heaven games. We talked about them. And I think this is one of the better ones that's done really well. A lot of polish, not a ton of content yet, but plenty of depth for I've put in like 6 or 7 hours. And I expect, given how well it's doing, given sort of the track record of the developers so far, I get the feeling that it's going to be well supported and they'll be adding more content to it. So that's been fun. But,
that's pretty cool. Yeah. I have played a little bit of Deep Rock Galactic. I bought it for all of my brothers-in-law to be because this is going to sound stupid, but they probably don't listen to the podcast. So, and if they do hear it, well, then that's what you fucking get for not ever inviting me, even though I don't like StarCraft. They get together and play StarCraft a lot online, like multiplayer StarCraft. And I was like, let's play a game that I don't suck at. What if we all play Deep Rock Galactic together? So I bought them all copies. I bought the 4-pack of Deep Rock Galactic and gave them each a copy of it. And we never followed through on it. So I've only played it solo a couple of times, but I do really think it's a cool-ish, it's a cool game. And so it's good to hear that the Survivors one is also good.
Yeah, I've been enjoying it. So other than that, that's really about it, other than what our main topic is. So unless you've got anything else to throw out there, let's move on to the main topic.
I don't have anything else to say other than I watched I thought I had seen before, but watched for the first time in my life, apparently, the 1984 Dune this morning. So I am Dune-headed. Okay. I'm Dune-pilled. Because I have seen all 3 Dune movies in the last 4 days.
Wow, that's impressive.
So I'm doomed.
So folks, listeners, in case you haven't figured it out, and we actually mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, so you should know. We're going to talk today about Dune Part 2. We talked about Dune Part 1 a couple years ago, and with the release of the sequel, we wanted to talk about it, and really, I will admit, I just really wanted to talk to somebody about it, so we're going to go ahead and do that. Before we get into any sort of spoilers and stuff, let's kind of go with big picture ideas, and if you've got some things you want to talk about from having watched the 1984 Dune, and it sounds like rewatched Dune Part 1, let's talk about that, kind of get our big impressions out of the way, and then we'll kind of dive in a little deeper. So
absolutely.
What did you think, Eden?
I had a very good time with it. I'm really glad I went and saw it in the theaters. That was really nice to see it on a very big screen. It wasn't the biggest screen. I was kind of annoyed. I don't know if your local multiplex is like this, but my local one has 3 big daddy screens and then 9 little baby screens. And little baby is all relative, obviously. It's still enormous compared to watching it at your house or whatever. But still, there's the 3 big ones and then the 9 babies. So when you go to see Madam Web, you see that in a baby theater, obviously. But
I'll just say we have locally, the AMC theater has one big D theater, which is kind of, they're bigger than the normal big, but not IMAX big. And
okay.
That's where I saw it the first time. And then the second time, this last Saturday, we actually saw it in IMAX.
So you saw the big screen.
Yes, I saw the real IMAX, not the IMAX 75 millimeter, because there's only 12 of those. But no, we did see it on an IMAX screen in an IMAX theater.
Yeah, so I did see it on the little baby, I did never see the first one in the theaters. I saw the first one at home on my TV, which is, it was good, but so it was fun to see it on a big screen. I thought it was really fun. Here's the thing I don't understand. And I already felt this way, but I especially feel this way after watching the Lynch film. People are like, oh, this is so, let me see. There was, one of the most jaw-droppingly weird pieces of art house psychedelia to ever come from a major studio is what Nicholas Barber wrote for the BBC. This is the most fucking straightforward movie possible. It is not art house psychedelia. It is a normal, good, blockbuster, exciting sci-fi flick. And that's great. Yeah. It's less weird than the first one. I think the first one is a weirder and I think maybe a little better film than the second one, but I've only seen the second one once. I've seen the first one twice now. But I think I liked that first half a little better, but I still had a really good time. I thought that the cast was very good. I thought that there were some really strong performances. But it's just like a good sci-fi flick. And then people are like, it's so weird. And it's like, it's not that fucking weird. It's like pretty normal.
It's not that weird. Really.
It's pretty normal. He rides a worm. He does some terrorism. He kills some bad guys. That's it. That's the movie. Anyway, I had a good time. I really liked it.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
And obviously you must have, because you wanted to talk about it.
I love this movie.
Great.
I loved the first one. I think we talked about it a while ago. Kind of my long-standing, now at this point 40-year relationship with Dune, having it start with that 1984 David Lynch movie, and then having read the book itself, Dune, multiple times, having read all of the ones that Frank Herbert wrote. I came out of Dune Part 2 with a similar feeling to when I came out of The Return of the King from Peter Jackson. Thinking to myself, all right, I think far more successfully than I would have anticipated, you adapted one of the fundamental works of modern fiction.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you look at Dune, again, you look at the influence of Dune as a book. It has influenced so much, not just sci-fi, but fantasy. I mean, the Wheel of Time, the Aiel are the Fremen. They straight up are. I mean, just 100%. And so, I came out of it going, was it perfect? No, of course it's not perfect, but I think that it was realistically about as good of an adaptation as could have been done, and successfully, while definitely making some changes, successfully adapted the story to a movie in a way that honestly expressly isn't some weird art house psychedelia bullshit.
Absolutely.
But that is a good movie that lots and lots of people can watch and enjoy.
Absolutely. I'm with you 100%. I think that hits it on the head. I think that you are exactly right, and that I feel the same way about this one, the way I feel about Return of the King. A very fine way to wrap up this story. Not the strongest one. I like the one before it better, but still really fucking good. I had a very good time, and like you said, and especially having just watched the Lynch film, it's not weird. It's totally normal. Our mother could watch this movie and understand this movie. That is the baseline for anyone can understand this movie. If our dear mom is not asking, no, I'm not saying this in a mean way, but like,
no. I know you're not. The only reason that I'm laughing a little bit is because, so we went to the movie last Saturday with Liz. She had to go back down to Salt Lake. Gareth and I were driving back up home to Pocatello. So we went north. Liz was going to head south. She was going to grab some dinner. In-N-Out had like a 20-minute line. She's like, this is stupid. She went to mom and dad's house, had dinner with them on Saturday, hung out with them a little bit, and then went home.
Nice.
And I remember her actually, after hanging out with mom and dad, saying, I told your dad he should go see it, but I told him he should take somebody besides your mom, because she's like, so that's the only reason I'm laughing. Mom could totally do it, but where mom is these days, love her so much. I don't know. I think this might be a little bit much for Mom.
You're probably right.
But that's only because that's only where Mom is right now. Our mother of previous years, yes, 100% totally could have gone to it and would have enjoyed it.
But like, it's just not that hard to understand. It's just not.
No,
and that's because they left out all the real weird shit. And I think to the credit of the writers, they didn't say jihad one time in either of these fucking movies. They did not bring up the Butlerian jihad. We do not know what a guild navigator looks like. And like, I'm a weirdo. I think that stuff is cool. So that's why when I watch the Lynch movie, I'm like, oh yes. But like, I understand also that I am an outlier here. It does not have, like, the Lynch film does not have the broad appeal that the Villeneuve films do, because the Villeneuve films are able to thread that needle like Peter Jackson did with The Lord of the Rings, of like, the fans are going to be happy because the main plot beats are here, or expressed in new ways that don't make you mad, that like, you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's a good way to recreate this, or to redirect these story elements in a new way that fits into the tone, fits into the feel of what you're making, but also is like broad enough, and I don't mean broad in a derogatory way, but broad enough that most people can watch it and be like, yeah, that was cool. I get it. I understand that. I know what Paul Muad'Dib Usul is and what that means, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, one of the things that I think is very well done in both of these movies is, if you know all of the stuff, so if you've read the books, if you're deep into it, there are little things, and I don't want to call them Easter eggs, because Easter egg feels like a gimmick to me. They're not gimmicky, but there are things that are in these movies that if you know, you'll see them and you'll appreciate that they were there. At the same time, I think that Villeneuve doesn't feel the need to over-explain these things.
Absolutely
he allows them to be there for the people who know, and they're going to enjoy it. And the people who don't know aren't going to give a shit. And they don't need to still enjoy the experience. And that's what I think impressed me so much about these movies, is there is a lot of subtext. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff where they trust they can trust the viewer. And I mean, let's talk briefly riding the sandworms. So you see, as they're getting their hooks in and they're kind of pulling these scales, these little kind of little holes and stuff, they don't bother to go into all the detail to say what, and I don't even remember, I think the David Lynch one maybe does.
It doesn't. Basically, you see, it's the same idea where like, you see Paul put the hooks into some sort of like openings, and like like I was talking with Cassie about it afterwards, and she was like, I thought it was really cool how it showed that like you use the hooks to pull that flap open because there's those little breathers in there. And so by having the flap open, the worm is signaled, oh, I can't go under. I have to stay up. I have to stay up or I'm going to choke. And so that is how they write it, by opening it up. And like, you know, my wife was just able to intuit that by having watched the movie. She didn't need any sort of long explanation of, oh, well, you have to get it in this like fold of skin to open it up so that you open their mouths and blah. No, she was able to be like, oh, blowholes. I get it. Mm-hmm. Has to stay above the ground.
And I like that, again, because I feel like, again, as you said, this isn't weird art house, sort of thing. That is the dumbest comment I think I've actually heard about this movie. But what it does is, again, I think they put a fair amount of trust in the audience to say, we're going to show you some things, but we're not going to tell you everything, and we're going to let you either figure it out or, again, don't care about it. It's not that important if you don't pick up on it. And if you do, then you're kind of like, oh, cool. Nice job.
Absolutely.
You know? So,
yeah.
And what other thoughts? Anything else big that you want to say before we kind of dive into the story a little bit more?
Casting remains on point.
Yes.
You know, this cast is still doing incredible work. Rebecca Ferguson is the most toxic.
She's the goat.
She's the most toxic TikTok boy mom I've ever seen. And I love that for her.
She is. She embraces it. And she is the manipulative, psychotic, she's the TikTok boy mom who's like, I love my husband, but I just love my son so much more than you'll ever understand. And like, that's her. That's her, yep. But in this movie. And she does it great. Like, she's really good in it. Zendaya got more time to do something besides just look pretty, because like, I understand why she was only in the movie to look pretty, that first one basically, and say like 3 lines, because they didn't meet up till the very end. But like, she's able to be a far bigger presence in this film and does a very good job with it. I really liked the casting. What's his name? Elvis. Austin Butler. Great as Feyd-Rautha. Great as Feyd-Rautha. The cast was really good. The cast was really game. They brought their A game, and I had a really good time with it. Biggest shout outs, I think, of the whole cast goes to Javier Bardem, who I have seen no shortage of, especially Arab people on Twitter being like, Javier just like opened and let the spirits of all of the Moors of Spain past just like embody him. And that was my Arabic uncle. That man was not a Spaniard. That is a dude from Iran or a dude from Saudi Arabia. He is so good. He is so good in this.
He was really good.
Yeah, he really
Anyway,
is.
that's about all I want to say without getting into the super spoiler territory. A lot of what we've said so far, maybe a little bit of spoiler, but also like, Dune has existed in the popular consciousness since this book came out in the 60s and got popular in the 70s. So like, you know that he's going to ride a worm. Everyone knows this.
He has to. The last kind of thing I want to talk about is it's the audio visual experience of it.
Sure.
Again, Hans Zimmer is kind of doing more. He's not just doing Dune Part 1 over again, but there's a lot of callbacks. It feels very familiar. Mm-hmm. And for the way it works with the movie, I really, really like the score. I think it works very well. I think that visually it is, for as brown of a movie it is still a beautiful movie to watch. I think there's some just really, really cool visual scenes. Some things where, for example, the Emperor's ship is this big reflective glowing like orb. And as it's, flying over Arrakis, and you see the way they kind of, they show that you've got Arrakis at the bottom of the screen and you've got this spaceship at the top, and you get that reverse mirror image of Arrakis as it's flying over. Just some really, really cool visual things like that.
Oh, yeah.
That I enjoyed. I thought that when they're on Giedi Prime, the Harkonnen homeworld, and
it was so disconcerting.
They talk about its black sun, which again goes into more in the book. But again, you don't need that. All you need to know is when you're outside and you're under the sun, it's just black and white. And so that contrast of, the Baron, as he's moving forward to his seat, he goes from his normal, still pasty kind of, but flesh color. He moves in, and then as he gets into the sunlight, he's just completely white, just completely bereft of color.
Oh yeah.
I love the way that the fireworks on Giedi Prime, they kind of look like ink blots. Just some really, really neat visual things that, especially watching it in IMAX on that big screen, feeling the sound, that was really where I was like, yes, this is again, I'm not going to go to the movie theater for every movie, but this is why movie theaters need to still exist.
Absolutely, they do.
So,
I'm with you 100% there. Like, this was a movie worth seeing on as big a screen as I could have. I wish it had been on the bigger one, but I'm really happy I saw it in the theaters, because that was the right way to see it, especially for the first time.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're going to go ahead now then, and we're going to move into spoiler territory. As Eden mentioned, look, this story has been around for a long time, but We're going to talk some specifics about the movie and the story as told in the movie. And so if you haven't seen it, just, come back. Come back and listen to the rest of this after you've seen it.
Go watch it.
Go watch it, because it's worth watching. It's worth watching. So I'm going to go through just kind of a really concise overview of the story, because, mostly what I want us to talk about isn't, I don't want to spend too much time getting bogged down in that, but I kind of want us to again, what about the story? What about this kind of stuff? What is, what stuck out at you? So the movie starts off, and we are introduced to the Princess Irulan. She is the daughter of the Emperor, and she's kind of, it's serving two purposes. It's introducing us to her as a character, and then to the Emperor. Again, we've heard of them. We haven't seen them yet. But it's introducing us to them, and then it's giving her this opportunity to sort of fill in and kind of give us, get us up to speed again, if you didn't go and watch the first movie. Mm-hmm. And she kind of is, they're talking about the fall of House Atreides. We then go back to Arrakis, and we've got Paul and we've got Jessica pretty much picking up exactly where the first movie ended. They are still carrying Jamis's body back to Sietch Tabr. He's still wrapped up in that thing. And we get this Harkonnen patrol that is coming in and is kind of looking for him. And I do want to kind of stop here, because I loved this scene. They're trying to be quiet. They're hiding, they're running off. These Harkonnen come over the hill. They see these tracks heading down towards this mountain or to this big rock. That's where Paul and Jessica are. They start heading that direction, and then all of a sudden they hear thumpers. So they know that the worms have been called. Mm-hmm. And then they say, climb. And you see them, they kind of run towards this rock, and then all of a sudden they activate this kind of levitation type thing. And you just see these weirdly black-suited Harkonnen troops just kind of guiding themselves up the side of the mountain as they're just sort of levitating up to the top of the rock. And it's a cool look. It looks so cool, I thought. I don't know. What do you think about that scene?
I thought it was really cool how they integrated the personal anti-grav devices, because the Baron has that. That's his whole deal, is he's gross and fat and floats everywhere instead of using his body. But it was interesting to see that was not only him. All of the soldiers also have this and are able to use it what they think is effectively, and then they still get got, because what is better than a dude with technology? A dude with faith, and the Fremen have faith.
Yes, they do.
And this movie and this book also is fundamentally about the danger of people who believe things.
Yeah.
Don't believe anything. That's the message you get from this movie. Don't believe anything. Just kidding. I'm kidding. But fundamentally, that's why the Fremen are so strong. And that is the whole point, is the Fremen have the power that they have because of their faith. Yeah, and that's why they can get these dudes who are just I'm here because it's my job, because I grew up on Gaib Prime, and so you work for the fucking Harkonnens.
Yep. Definitely. So they take out all of this Harkonnen troop, then they head back to Sietch Tabr. As they get there, there's a little bit of Paul and Jessica aren't necessarily welcomed into the Sietch. Mm-hmm. You've got Stilgar, who is already kind of I believe in him. And he instantly, as you said, Stilgar is the embodiment of the faith of the Fremen people in the Lisan al-Gaib, who is this, again, this Messiah that's been kind of implanted in their society by the Bene Gesserit, because the Bene Gesserit kind of remind me of the Jedi in that they're super manipulative and they suck. But hey, that's a different thing.
Amen. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. As you watch this, you just say, oh, it's the same thing as when you read The Lord of the Rings or watch The Lord of the Rings for the first time. And you go, everyone's a criminal. Everyone's a criminal who has stolen everything from what has come before them. And this is true of sci-fi and fantasy, frankly, because like you already mentioned, Wheel of Time, like how many other fantasy series are like, we've got our like powerful witch warrior women, but there's one dude who can use their power even better. Like this is Wheel of Time. This is that shitty Terry Goodkin series. There's there's other ones too. Like they're all just like harshen Paul Atreides' mellow here because he did it first and he did it better.
Yeah, very true.
And like Lucas stole a ton. Lucas stole a ton. So much.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty bad. But, you know, I mean, I did see something funny I have to mention. And I don't remember who it was. It was in my Threads feed. So it wasn't somebody that I follow necessarily. And I will give the poster full credit. She took this like a champ, not knowing, having seen Dune Part 2, she was like, wow, it really seems like this borrows a lot from Star Wars.
And you're like, yeah, dog, this book came out in 1965.
She was very quickly instructed that Star Wars borrowed from this book.
And hopefully people were kind in their informing.
The ones I saw were, and she was very gracious to respond with like, I didn't know that. Thank you so much for telling me. Like over and over again as people kept telling her. So, you know, again, full credit to her for taking it like a champ.
Braver than the troops for not deleting it. Because the first time someone was like, dog, Dune came out in 1965, I would have been like, oop, delete.
Yes. No, like I say, I was impressed. They get back there. You see, well, one interesting thing that was, I love this. After they had killed all the Harkonnen troops, they're in there and they're sucking all their water out. And you see them like hooking them up. They're just they're just draining these guys dry. And I love Stilgar, you know, he makes this offhand comment and he's like, oh, it's bad water. You know, we still collect it, but it's bad water. Too full of chemicals.
He's like, you use it on the crops. It's fine.
Yeah. They get Jameis's body back and you see them going through this whole ritual thing where they're now taking out his water and then they're returning it to this huge, huge underground, you know, water collection that basically everybody, you know, every Fremen who dies, they collect their water and then they put it in this great big huge underwater lake with the hope that this will at some point allow Arrakis to turn into the green paradise that they've been promised it can be.
Yep.
At the same time, you've got Stilgar. He tells Jessica their Reverend Mother is dying. She needs to become their new Reverend Mother because she is a Bene Gesserit, and basically tells her, look, this is what you can do to become one of us, or you're an outsider, so we're going to kill you, or we're going to put you out in the desert, and the desert will kill you. Mm-hmm. So she's like, well, it's not much of a choice. Okay. So she goes. She drinks the water of life, which we later find out is just basically concentrated essence of what's inside a sandworm. Normally poisonous. She drinks it. She is able to survive because, as Paul points out, when they're like, oh, this is magic, he's like, it's not magic. The Bene Gesserit are trained how to transmute poisons. This is just her training. This isn't, you know, he's kind of like, this isn't special. You think that this makes her special. This is just what she's trained to do.
Which then, of course, makes Stilgar be like, oh, he keeps denying it. That's proof he's the Lisan al-Gaib. He's so humble. Only the Lisan al-Gaib would be so humble. It's Lisan al-Gaib. It's him. It's so funny.
Well, and that's the thing. That's actually one of the things that I thought was great is there are some legitimate moments of laughter and like funny things in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think were so important because it is a heavier movie. It isn't super hopeful. It doesn't end in this like, oh, the good guys have won. It's like, what has happened? But I love that you've got multiple moments where Stilgar, like Javier Bardem, is legitimately funny in this movie at multiple different points.
He's very good.
He really is. Anyway, they do the dying Reverend Mother realizes basically as she is dying that they done fucked up because they gave Lady Jessica the water of life, which will now impart unto her all of the memories of all the Reverend Mothers that have gone before and give her this sort of generational knowledge. But she's pregnant. Oops. And so now she has a baby who has also ingested of this. And immediately now we've got a baby who is in the womb talking to her mother. And we see, Lady Jessica walking through the halls and like having conversations with her unborn daughter. And they're like starting to scheme together of who do they need to win on their side so that Paul can become, the Lisan al-Gaib. And it is an interesting part that, again, it's a little unsettling. And I think it's kind of supposed to be. Again, I'll kind of move through the rest of it a little more quick. Now that she has drinking the water of life, she decides at some point she needs to go south. In the south of Arrakis, that's where they refer to it again and again, the fundamentalists, the Fremen
real
who
freaks
really
are.
believe. This is where exactly the ones who are like hardcore in the Lisan al-Gaib belief. And Paul keeps having this vision that if he goes south and if he follows this figure to the south who, over time begins to look more and more like his mother, that it is going to lead to a lot of death. So he is refusing to go south. His mom's like, you got to come down. You need to do this. He's like, nope, I'm not going. I'm going to stay up here with the Fremen. And then we get some time where he's just with the Fremen. He's with the Fedaykin. He's becoming a fighter. They're raiding the Harkonnens. There's this really cool scene I love where they are just attacking this Harkonnen spice harvester, and kind of the techniques that they use. They're hiding behind kind of these big, almost like spider-like legs that the harvester has so that the ornithopters that are flying around can't find them as much. They've got to get the ornithopters to start shooting, because when they're shooting, then their shield goes down enough that they can take them out. It was just, for me, it was a really cool action scene. And I loved the bizarre appearance of the Harkonnen spice harvesters. It's like this big bulbous, it looks like this head on top of, again, it's kind of like an octopus head on top of this little teeny shrunk down octopus body. And, just again, the visual language of the difference between House Atreides and their things and the Fremen and their things and House Harkonnen and their things, I think was, again, really, really well done.
Oh, yeah.
Eventually, Paul and Chani, they fall in love. Paul embraces the Fremen ways. He's learning their language. He eventually rides the sandworm. And this is kind of the big final thing where, now he's kind of a Fremen now that he has ridden the sandworm. A great scene there. Again, Javier Bardem plays it so well, where he's like, just call a little one. You don't need to impress anyone, and he's just going on. And then the worm starts coming and he's just like, this is really big. What are you doing?
And then he's like, it's so big. It's the Lisan al-Gaib. Of course he can do it. Of course he can write a big one. It's the Lisan al-Gaib.
He's so freaking good. He kind of steals the show if it wasn't for the fact that so many other people are so good as well. But he really
he still does steal the show. I genuinely believe he steals the show.
Yes. Yeah, he really is. He's so good. Again, Paul becomes really becomes part of the Fremen and is really integrated well into them because of all the things they have been doing as Fremen to disrupt spice. The Baron loses his shit. He replaces his nephew Rabban with Fade Rautha. We get this whole scene where Fade Rautha, for like his birthday or something, he goes into an arena and he has the last 3 Atreides warriors, 2 of whom have been drugged, but one who normally would be drugged has not been drugged. Fade realizes this. The Bene Gesserit are there to watch this because, again, we get these little scenes where we see the Reverend Mother, I'm blanking on her name, but Helen Mohaim, that's her. Mm-hmm. She's been scheming behind all this. I mean, she was, and we learn that she was she really was responsible for the fall of House Atreides. She's the one who told the Emperor to set them up this way. She's got a bunch of Bene Gesserit there observing Fade Rautha because, again, they've been manipulating these bloodlines, and Fade has the potential to be in a situation where, again, his bloodline could lead to this Kwisatz Haderach as well. The Lady Fenring kind of seduces him, comes back and reports, yes, we can control him. And she kind of puts her hand over her belly and is like, and the bloodline is secured, basically telling us that she knows she's pregnant with his child. She says it's a girl, just like the the Reverend Mother Helen, Gaius Helen Mohaim, said. And, you get to really kind of see that Fade is, as they call him, he's a psychotic. He's a twisted
freak.
dude.
He's a little freak.
And this is, again, where you see just how bad the Bene Gesserit are. Because, again, the Reverend Mother, she's like, great, don't care. We might need him. So I don't care that he's psychotic. We're going to manipulate him and twist him however we can. Mm-hmm. We get back to Arrakis, and they find Gurney Halleck. Gurney survived the attack. Basically, he got kind of teamed up with some spice smugglers, and with the Fremen really disrupting the Harkonnen spice harvesting efforts, it's been great for the smugglers. It's made it so that they can make a lot of money. Gurney joins up again with Paul, tells them about the family atomics, that they do have those, and he knows where they are. They go and they find them. Again, a great scene where Josh Brolin is like, that's where they are. You got Javier Bardem's like, that's a stupid place. And Gurney is like, yeah, because nobody looked there. And he's like, but they're right there. And he goes, but did you find them? And he's like, no, because it's a stupid place. And Gurney's like, well, so it worked, didn't it? It was a great exchange. I loved it.
It was really good.
In the midst of this, Paul has this idea that he could use the atomics to destroy the spice fields, which would cripple the Harkonnen. Chani points out that, well, that will destroy our way of life. What are you doing to us if you do that? And then he starts having these visions where the atomics are being used, and Chani is, she's getting burned and all this stuff, and then wakes up to hearing explosions, and basically Fade has now arrived on Arrakis, and he is just like shelling the shit out of Siege Tabor and destroying it. And this leads to all of the Fremen from there. They've got to move south. And so finally now Paul feels like he's forced to go south, despite the fact that he didn't want to. He goes south, drinks of the water of life, which his mom has already been to the place where it is collected from. And she tells the person who's kind of the caretaker of this, hey, a man's going to come, blah, blah, blah. He drinks that. He basically is unconscious. They think he's dead. Chani shows up. And again, she thinks he's dead. Jessica says, no, his vitals are just so low that you can't detect him, but he's not dead. He needs you. And through again, and this is one of the big things that the movie implies without necessarily coming. Well, no, it actually does come right out and say it a few times. There's all these prophecies about the Lisan al-Gaib. And, there's this prophecy where Chani, which her secret Fremen name is, I don't remember exactly what it is, but it means like desert spring. And she hates the name, so she doesn't use it. But there's a prophecy where desert spring tears will save him. And, she's crying as she thinks she's dying. She touches her tear, dips it in the water of life. And then that combination touches it to his lips, and then he wakes up. And, there's so many things where Paul can tell he's being manipulated and is very angry about it. But at the same time, you see him kind of realizing, but this is how I can get my revenge for my family. You see Chani, who is so opposed to this, but at times like this, kind of you see her also being manipulated. And, he comes to, and she just straight up slaps him and gets up and walks away because she knows she's being played as well. And, then you get to this point where basically kind of Paul just decides, and they never make it clear. Does he believe he is the Lisan al-Gaib? Or again, does he see this as a way to reach the ends that he is trying to reach? Yeah. And, he kind of embraces that, goes in front of all the Fremen. They're getting ready to they've got knives out. They're ready to attack him. And he starts talking to one of them in particular, and he's telling him about your grandmother, and she died, and she injured her eye doing this when she was 12 and all this kind of stuff. And all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, he knows because he drank the water of life. He gets all those same memories. And so now all of a sudden they're ready to follow him. You've got the Emperor. He comes to Arrakis, brings his Sardaukar, brings his kind of whole retinue. They set up outside of Arrakeen, and sorry, just a second. They set up outside of Arrakeen, and then there's the Fremen, and they've got this plan. You're going to come in here. You're going to come in here, and then we get the big battle. They use the nukes.
It's a cool battle.
Wipe out. I think it's a great battle because they use the nukes to wipe out part of the rock wall that was going to protect them from the storm. And through that big hole in the rock wall come a bunch of the Fremen on worms, wiping things out. You've got Chani and her group coming in. You've got Paul and his fundamentalists coming in. And they come into this like portable palace. And, there is the Baron. He has been knocked off of like his levitation things have been cut. He's laying on the ground because the Emperor's not very happy with him. They're all there. In comes Paul. Paul walks past everybody up to the Baron, stabs him in the neck, and reveals to him something that was revealed to him when he drank the water of life, and that is his mother, Lady Jessica, was an illegitimate child of the Baron. And so he stabs him and he says, "Grandpa" or "grandfather," and kills him. Then he kind of gathers all of the prisoners. They go to Arrakeen, into that main compound that we saw in the first movie. And then kind of, they pull them out they get the prisoners out. The great houses have arrived in orbit because the Baron had called them previously. And you kind of basically have Paul goes up to the Emperor and is like, "Look, this is it. I'm taking over. I'll take your daughter's hand in marriage. I will become the Emperor and you're going to bow down to me." And, he refuses. And then he says, "Okay, then either you fight me or, call a champion." He calls Fade Rautha as his champion. They get in a knife fight. Paul gets pretty roughed up, but he manages to kill Fade. Finally, the Emperor bows, kisses the signet ring. They announce what has happened to the great houses. And then Gurney comes back and he says, "The great houses do not recognize your ascendancy." And Paul basically turns to the Fremen and he says, "Lead them to paradise." And the Fremen board the Sardaukar ships and go up into space to start this war that he's been worried about the whole movie. And that's pretty much where it ends.
Yep. It is surprising how much this movie simultaneously is a satisfying end to a 2-part film series and is also very clearly setting up a third film that I think they're probably going to get to make because they've already crested over 400 million in the last 2 weeks. So I think they're going to get to make this third movie. And boy, does this movie do a lot of piece setting that is not in the book, but that is, I think, wise piece setting. Like, Paul and Chani are pretty okay at the end of that book series. Or then, not the end of the series, the end of that first book. Yeah, Paul gets married to Irulan or whatever, but like, the strain between he and Chani is built a lot sooner into this. And like, that's setting up some really interesting tension. Like, there's that scene where right before he goes and he says, "Yeah, I'm going to marry your daughter." He's like, "I'll love you forever." And she's like, "Will you?" And he's like, "Yes, I will." And then like 30 seconds later, he's like, "Hey, I'm going to marry your daughter." And so obviously poor Chani is like, "Excuse?"
Yeah.
So like, it just sets up that tension really, really well. And I mean, in terms of like cameo appearances, Anya Taylor-Joy is here as Aaliyah for 15 seconds.
Like 2 lines or something, And then one thing I did like is now after that scene, every time Jessica is talking to her and she's
hear her voice.
We now hear her. Yeah, exactly. We hear her voice.
You hear her voice. So. Yeah, I thought it was really good. I thought it was really fun. Again, I don't know how, like, I don't know if he just rolled up a big truck of cash to like every young starlet's house to get them all in this movie, but like, he's got everyone. He's got Zendaya. He's got Lea Seydoux. He's got Florence Pugh. He's got Anya Taylor-Joy. These are some of like the biggest names in like young starlets. If we get Hunter Schafer in the next one, he's basically got a full house, man. And like, I don't know how he did it, but he did it, and they're all really good in it. Like, the cast is really strong in this film. And
I agree.
I just had a really good time with it. I thought it was really, really fun. Chalamet just does the damn thing. Like, he knows how to be moody and rude, but also charismatic. And, like, I really liked that 84 movie. I really like Kyle MacLachlan, but he doesn't quite have it the way Chalamet does.
No, I agree.
It's a little more mystical. Like you said, it feels like in the 84 film, it feels like that Paul Atreides believes he too is the Kwisatz Haderach. Like, he believes it.
He totally
This movie,
it.
I don't know if this Paul knows it yet. He is, obviously. Yeah. He is. He keeps fulfilling goddamn prophecies. But, like, even by the end of this film, it feels like he is on the precipice of being like, I still don't know if I believe this, but I also feel like this is the corner I have gotten myself backed into, and these are the only plays that I have.
Yeah.
And it's this or die, so I'm not going to die, so I guess I'm going to do this Lisan al-Gaib bullshit. Call me Muad'Dib. Yep. What do you call the mice? That. Call me a mouse. I don't give a shit. Call me a mouse.
Yep.
And I really think that take on Paul of his like uncertainty of whether or not he is the Messiah, pejorative, like, this is not a good Messiah. He is the Messiah. Yes, this is a bad thing. This is a very bad thing that he is the Messiah. And I like that this movie frames it in that way of like being like, this is not a good thing, and he's not sure if he's it, but you as the viewer know that he is, and that's pretty fucked up.
Yeah. Well, and you know, we go back to the 1960s, and when this book was written, and we see this problematic archetype in a lot of fiction, and that is really, again, the white Messiah, right?
But that ain't what Paul is.
Exactly. And
Paul, everyone, I have seen so many people on social media being like, Dune's a white savior story. And I just want to be like, shut the hell up. You don't know what you're talking about. This is the inversion of a white savior story, because this is the colonizer coming in and being like, I'm going to save you all. And it's bad. He's going to get trillions of people killed in his holy war. He is a bad person.
Yeah. And that's, again, what I liked about this, both, and I think they do a good job in both the movie and the book, even though I think they approach it through kind of slightly different ways. And it gets back to what you were just talking about, where you've got Paul in this movie who doesn't, again, like you said, you don't know if he believes or if he is just like these are the cards I've been dealt. I gotta play them this way.
This is the play I have. This is all I've got. So I'm gonna lay my cards on the table. This is all I got.
And it's just like you said. I've heard the same thing. People are like, oh, white Messiah, white savior. But again, you go back, you go into the book Dune Messiah. The title of the book is Dune Messiah, and you realize, no, in terms of like doing good things, Paul has failed completely.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's where, and I thought that Villeneuve did a really good job of building that tension and capturing that idea of, like you said, the inversion of the white savior, because it looks like that's what he is, but he's going to make things worse.
Considerably.
So
and then his kid's going to make things even worse, which we're not going to get to his kid. They will not make it past 3 movies, and I don't want them to.
No, I don't
as much as part of me does want to see a worm man.
You want to see Leto the Second as a giant 4,000-year-old worm?
Part of me does, yeah. The sicko in my brain wants to, but like they're not going to. That's because that is when, like, as we said, these are crowd pleasers. The first one made like 500 million. This one's probably going to make 500 or 600 million. The people are loving it. Everyone on the social media is like, this movie's so great. I'm having a great time. How you going to do that with God Emperor?
No, you just can't.
You can't.
I mean, really.
It's too weird. You can do Messiah.
The first 3 books, you could do Children of Dune.
You could do Children, maybe.
It'd until take the a end, lot of work. When they get the flatworm things that they're using as their armor, and then that's when they start to turn into worms. That's when it starts to get weird.
Oh yeah, when the sand trout come, that's when you're like, I don't know about this anymore, guys.
Yeah. But then once you get into God Emperor and Heretics and Chapter House, that's where
unadaptable.
Don't do those.
And they won't, and they don't need to. They'll do Messiah. It'll come out. It'll do gangbusters. Everyone's going to be like, oh my God, Aaliyah Atreides, she's the worst. And you'll be like, she is the worst. That's exactly the point. She's the worst. And it'll be great. I'm excited for it.
Yeah. Well, we've gone kind of long. So unless any other thoughts you have before we wrap it up? Statement?
I had a really good time. If you have never read it, just go see these movies and you'll have a great time. And if you have read it, go see these movies. And also watch the Lynch movie. It's like it's like a fever dream. That is what the person who said that bullshit about like jaw-droppingly weird piece of art house psychedelia. The 84 movie is a lot closer to that.
Oh yeah.
It's got 8-foot fetus people trapped inside of boxes that are the ones who make space folds so you can fly your goddamn spaceships. This movie didn't talk about that shit at all. You know spice exists and that you're like space travel. I know you need spice for space travel, but you don't know that there are 8-foot infant worm fetuses in boxes that snort that shit and then fold space. And you don't need to. Yeah. But David Lynch saw fit to be like, do you know what I'm going to show you first thing in this fucking movie? An 8-foot fetus creature in a box. And it's like, that's cool. It approaches it from such a different scale that seeing the two and in my brain putting the two in conversation with one another has been a delight all day, thinking about the differences between the way that hiring a weird pervert to make your movie versus hiring a really well-regarded Hollywood director to make your movie does for your movies. And I say, and I call David Lynch a weird pervert with the most love and affection. I think David Lynch is an incredible filmmaker, one of my all-time favorites, but he's kind of a weird pervert. And Denis Villeneuve is like a guy who knows how to make very arresting visual films that are also just good crowd pleasers. Like Arrival, that's just a good sci-fi movie. Blade Runner 2049, that's just a pretty good follow-up to Blade Runner. It's cool.
Yep. All right. Well, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up now.
Let's do it. You got to get to bed.
I love this movie. I love the first one. I think they're great interpretations of this book, and people should go and see them. I think they're great. So on that note, we'll wrap it up. And I think, are we doing some more Godzilla in a couple weeks?
Next week, or in 2 weeks, we'll be watching 1989's Godzilla versus Biollante. And I will not spoil for neither you nor the viewer who or what Biollante is. We'll all find out together.
All right. Sounds good. I look forward to it. So go ahead and please subscribe if you haven't. Share this with others. Leave us a review. Leave us a star rating. And we'll be back in 2 weeks to discuss more Godzilla. Until then, have a good one.
See y'all later.